There's this idea in life, and this is that people will not change or grow until their desire to change remains or becomes greater than their desire to stay as they are. Right, what we're essentially saying here is that some people are not ready to grow. Some people are not ready to change. Some people will go through life waiting for someone to enter their lives who will make change happen for them. This, in essence, is what it means to be irresponsible. Responsibility in life is the foundations of empowerment. Responsibility in life is the basis for maturity. Right? We grow in maturity as we take greater degrees of responsibility for all of the various components of our lives. We grow in maturity as we take responsibility for the part that our thinking processes, that our mindset is playing in our emotional experience. And this is important because our emotional experience has a tendency of influencing our actions, our attitudes, our habits, and our behaviours. It's our behaviours that are visible in life. Our behaviours, or our actions, or our lack of actions sometimes, is what generates the results and the outcomes and the consequences of our lives, for better or for worse. Alright, so some people will go through life feeling sorry for themselves, feeling sad about the outcomes and the results and the consequences that they're walking in, whilst failing to appreciate or take responsibility for the part that they are playing in determining their outcomes, the results and the consequences. Because it's significantly easier to blame other people, to blame mum, to blame dad, to blame society, the church, God, teachers, brothers, sisters, the boss. It's easier to blame everyone else than what it is to point our little pointy fingers a little bit closer to home. All right. So until we become disciplined at pointing our little pointy fingers in this direction, we stand at risk of not changing too much about our lives, because all change starts within. As we begin to change our mind about things, our perspective change. As our perspective changes, our attitude changes. As our attitude changes, our then habits, actions and behavioural choices and patterns then have a tendency of also changing, which goes on to influence the results, the consequences and the outcomes that we experience in life. Now, what I could do is I could tell you what a healthy mindset looks like, but unless I give you a bit of a contrastive analysis, unless I show you two flip sides of the same coin, then you might fail to appreciate what is better or worse. Make sense, right? Your mindset is the one that you have, and from your mindset and from your perspective, your mindset is the right mindset. Am I right? Of course I am, because you don't know anything else right now, because you don't know what you don't know, in the same way that I don't know what I don't know. Life is such an interesting thing, isn't it? So there are various traits and attitudes that we will take towards different aspects and experiences in life. Right? I'm doing my best to generalize this teaching as best that I can. There is a fixed mindset which is inflexible, that is not yet ready to change. And there is a growth-orientated mindset that is open, it's receptive, it's ready to change, it wants to improve, it wants to grow. Growth-orientated mindsets serve us. Fixed mindsets restrict us. So those people who you can identify as living restrictive lives, small lives, unrelational lives, tend to operate more out of a fixed mindset. All right. So when it comes to our skill set, when it comes to how intelligent we are, we will take one of two perspectives or two attitudes towards our skills and our intelligence. All right. If we are off a fixed mindset, if you're of a fixed mindset, you might be inclined to say, no, my skills and my intellect or my intelligence is fixed. I either am intelligent or I am not intelligent. Some people will say, I'm very intelligent. Some people will say, I'm stupid, I'm not intelligent at all. Some people will say, I'm hugely skilled. Some people will say, I'm not skilled at all. And what we're seeing here is kind of this black or white thinking style. It's fixed. It's kind of like fully in, fully out. Now, back in the 60s, 70s and 80s, personality tests became a thing. In some parts of society, they still are a thing. My goodness, some employers do personality tests with their employees, kind of like a personality test is a way of gauging a person's character. My goodness, that's like a really old school way of thinking, right? That might have been a thing back in the, as I say, 60s, 70s, 80s, when cognitive psychology first became a thing, but now cognitive psychology has been a thing for decades, all right? The beautiful thing about theories and bodies of idea is that they expand, they grow over time. So the way in which I'm presenting CBT today, for example, will most likely be very, very different from how someone was teaching it 10, 15, 20, or 25 years ago. And likewise, in 15 or 20 years' time, some people will have studied perhaps the way in which I present CBT as a field of ideas, and have also studied perhaps Aaron Beck. Aaron T. Beck, the founding father of cognitive behavioural therapy, is still alive as of 2020, and every now and again I believe he still even delivers presentations and teachings. Right? Never had the good fortune of actually meeting Mr. Beck, but I would have loved to. I know his daughter Judith, she still delivers a lot of kind of trainings around the world today. So if you want a good, valuable CBT-based training, other than obviously me, definitely you might as well go to the Beck Institute, go right back to its source. So the reason why I say this, some people will define themselves as not being skilled or not being intelligent, and it's just a reflection of a fixed mindset, all right? Kind of like the decision's already been made. Rather than considering from a growth-orientated mindset that, you know, skills and our intelligence can be matured and expanded upon. Some people, we talked about personality tests just a few moments ago, and personality tests would be, you know, so do you like this? Do you do that? Do you do this? Do you? And it's like yes or no answers, as if a quiz or a test can just tell us who we are. That's ridiculous. All right, all that we are is just a generalized response when we do personality tests. But what we really know at heart is that, of course, we're not a generalized response. We're not a generalized categorization that fit into a, you know, global group of people. We're unique. Of course, we want to be so much more than that. The growth-orientated mindset tells us that we can become whoever we want to become. If we want to grow in maturity, if we want to grow in character, if we want to grow in consistency, if we want to grow in decisiveness, if we want to grow in creativity, if we want to become more passionate, more compassionate, more caring, if we want to become more loyal, more faithful, more whatever, we can become whatever we want to become because we can grow. If we want to grow in intelligence and knowledge, we can read more books. We can take more video-based courses like this. We can go and study. We can go and model someone. We can go and find ourselves a mentor or a coach or be educated in whatever way we want to. And we can develop skills. We can develop whatever we want to. If I wanted to learn how to fly a helicopter, which I don't, all I would need to do is go to the local helicopter flight school and get some lessons in exactly the same way that I learned to ride a bike back when I was about 5 years old. Some people say, I can't do this, I can't do that. What they would actually be more accurate in saying is, I haven't yet learned to do this. I haven't yet learned to do that. You see, the language is powerful, and the words that we use can have a knock-on effect on how we feel about ourselves. Hence the reason it's useful to understand the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Because if we're fixed, we say, I cannot. I am not able to. The growth-orientated mindset will say, I haven't yet learned to. How can I? Very, very different. All right? So, we all have concerns in life, am I right? We all have issues, we all have fears, we all have anxieties. Some people allow themselves to be overwhelmed and crushed by their fears and anxieties. Other people appreciate that fear, anxiety, stress, tension is just part of life. All right? Some people's major primary concerns in life is how they're perceived by other people. All right, we go through life, some people go through life doing their best, hoping that they're perceived well by other people. So what we're talking about here is essentially a motivation, right? Now, you can have two people doing their best in life. One person's doing their best, hoping to gain some social recognition or some appreciation, or to have some boxes ticked or get a certificate by someone who they want to get a certificate from or be approved of, or received well by. whereas other people will be head down doing their best in life because they can, because they simply want to grow, without giving two hoots about what anyone else thinks about them. You know, I remember years ago, when I first got into, so I was a bit of a late bloomer in life, right? I joined the military at the age of 16 because my primary takeaway from my school year's education experience was that I couldn't learn. I'd been labelled as dyslexic back in my youth, and this kind of stuck with me for quite a few years. This was a teacher, incidentally. A teacher took it upon herself to diagnose me. Didn't have any psychological background, no experience in anything medical or anything biological, no facts, no evidence, just decided one day that I was dyslexic. Didn't take into consideration that I actually just had quite a unique learning style. Back in the days, I didn't appreciate this back then, by the way. I wouldn't receive information particularly well, just sitting in a classroom and listening to someone talk at me, all right, write information on the board and say, now remember this. I did not retain information like that. I retained information in a different way. I actually have one of these minds that retains information best when I have an opportunity to speak things out, right? Being quite naturally extroverted, right? When I speak things out, what I'm able to do is make sense of things. I make sense of things as I do speak them out, right? I have this tendency of actually learning more from speaking things out than what I do when I'm kind of listening to people talk at me. Right, which is quite strange, it's quite unusual. But listen, I'm not alone. Many people do this in life. Some people receive information well, other people understand and retain information better when they actually take it upon themselves to speak things out. Right? Listen, we're all different, we're all unique. But back then, understanding various learning styles hadn't really been a model that kind of made its way into conventional education. All right, there's different learning styles. Some people learn more effectively through kind of watching, i.e. visually. Some people retain information auditorially because they can just listen, hear, remember. Some people retain information best kinesthetically, which essentially means when we get a sense or a feel for something. All right, I get a feel for something once I've worked it out. So the reason why I share that is because I spent years of my life worrying about how I was perceived by other people. When I first started teaching, one of my gravest concerns was, my goodness, am I going to be received well? You know, what happens if other people, you know, don't like my teaching style? What will that mean about me? So I ended up doing my best, teaching, giving it my absolute all, but my motivation was being received well by others. Something shifted over the last decade ago, well, probably about 8 years ago actually, when instead of worrying about how I would be received by other people, I said, you know what, instead I'm just going to do my best because I can. I'm just going to be me. I'm going to teach from a place of absolute authenticity because I can. All right? As this happened, I went on to grow in my understanding of truth. Many of the theories and the concepts that I'm presenting with you, because I've presented them so many times, I've come to appreciate them with such depth. It means that I'm not using a script here. I'm just being honest with you. I'm being real with you. All right? It's hopefully enabling you to better relate to me rather than me just taking a rigid, approach to try to teach you information and try to help you understand things because I'm worried about how it is that you're going to receive me. Now, listen, our main concerns in life will be how we're being perceived by other people, or our main concern in life will be learning what's true and growing in maturity. I found that this attitude serves us significantly more than what this one does. Some people spend their whole lives going round and round in circles for fear of what other people think of them. So fixed mindset, growth mindset. Then there's the effort that we make, all right? Because we're all making an effort in some area of life. Those of a fixed mindset, their efforts generally serve to impress other people because the primary concern is how they're perceived by other people. Do you see how this all kind of ties in? Whereas people of a growth-orientated mindset, the effort they make, they understand, will determine or influence the outcomes that they go on to produce. Now, the reason why this is going to be important for those of a growth-orientated mindset is because they already have goals in place. They have an objective, something that they want to achieve or accomplish in life. People of a fixed mindset tend not to have too much of a vision for their futures, especially in terms of that which they want to go on and create. fixed mindset people tend not to be overly creative. Creativity is usually only born out of a growth-orientated mindset, because as people grow in awareness of who they are, they tend to grow in confidence. And confidence is a bit of a prerequisite for creativity, you'll find. And there's another little nugget of wisdom right there. Confidence tends to be the prerequisite of creativity. People tend to only create themselves expressively, either with their hands or as they communicate or in whatever way, because they no longer concern themselves with how they're perceived by other people. When our efforts are to impress people because we're worried about how we're perceived, then we're usually going to commit to the process of being someone that we're not, or being false, or doing what we think is going to be received best by other people. Imitators, you'll get copycats and imitators who will create stuff, but they're not expressing themselves authentically or creatively. They're just trying to sell stuff or be liked. Whereas raw creativity, authentic creativity, is free. It's freedom expressed, where people are just doing their best, wanting to give their all, express themselves in a way that is relevant and appropriate for them, because they understand that how we express ourselves will determine the outcomes that we go on to produce in life.